Do you ever get that feeling? That realization that you are not, in fact, the center of the universe? Not the main character? You probably don't even qualify as a supporting cast member in the grand opera of humankind. Maybe it hits you at random, like a freight train as you're driving to work. The static in your mind suddenly interrupted by the understanding that each passing car carries another entirely unique individual. Someone with their own family, friends, and morning commute. Someone saddled with their own hopes and memories and regrets. And you realize that you and the stranger next to you are just two among millions, even billions of other people doing just about the same thing each and every day. Going through the motions of life without fanfare or accolade. Maybe that feeling takes hold when the news shows images of hurricanes or tornadoes ripping human creations apart, our fragile bodies and buildings so vulnerable against the forces of nature. Suddenly, like a wave, it washes over you that all the things you take for granted in this life could be gone in an instant. Perhaps it's the actions of humanity itself that sends this creeping dread up your spine. Seeing what happens when people succumb to the allure of power over their fellow man. The banality of evil. Maybe you don't think about it at all. Maybe it's already overwhelming enough worrying about your job, bills, relationships. Existential dread is a luxury, really. Something you might not have time for when you're trying to feed your family and keep a roof over your head. Or save humanity from extinction, of course. Maybe it's better to just put one foot in front of the other, do what needs to be done, and forget the rest. There's one place where I, personally, can't ignore those existential thoughts, though, no matter how hard I try. And that place is laying on the ground and looking up at the stars. Halo Combat Evolved released on November 15th, 2001 for the original Xbox. I was just 7 years old at the time, and by that point, the scariest game I had played was probably Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for the PS1. Those trolls in the dungeon were just way too much for me to handle. It wouldn't be until a couple years later that I finally convinced my parents to get me the Green Machine to play the game with the Green Man on front. I joined the Balmer Squad. Developers! Just as Halo 2 was releasing. And I mean, come on. I'm not gonna play the stinky old game first. I'm diving straight into the new one. It has dual wielding and naked aliens. It's not like I missed any major plot threads from Halo Combat Evolved anyway.
Oh, shit. This is it, baby. Hold me.
Halo 2 starts off with a bang. After some quick introductions,
You told me there wouldn't be any cameras.
And you told me you were gonna wear something nice.
we're thrown right into the action. The Covenant have launched a surprise attack on Earth's defensive MAC cannons, and it's our job to send them packing. The music is blasting, the guns all rip through your enemies, and grenades send bodies flying. 10-year-old me was absolutely in awe. And then this happens.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Just absolute king shit. The tone shifts quite suddenly as we're shot down over old Mombasa, though. The city is deserted, bombed out buildings lining our path as we rally the troops fighting for their lives on each street corner. You can imagine what this place must have been like before, a vibrant beachside metropolis full of life and culture. Now things are just going from bad to worse. We fight our way through the old city and cross the bridge into New Mombasa. Narrow streets and humble buildings give way to huge boulevards and towering skyscrapers. This is the site of the first space elevator, and still serves as a major hub of trade and innovation. At least it did, until this morning. A scarab stalks the streets of the city center, a hulking spider-like machine that led the invasion force here. We board the scarab and take it down, and Chief remains as cool and composed as ever in the face of disaster. But it isn't enough. The Covenant got what they wanted from this place. Their ship rockets into slipspace, creating a thermonuclear scale explosion in its wake. Cars and debris are sent flying, and the streets and buildings that our fellow Marines died to protect are reduced to ashes. New Mombasa, a symbol of humanity's progress, is wiped from the map. This moment is over pretty quickly, and my kid brain didn't quite have the time to grasp exactly how devastating it truly is. This is the first time in the Halo series where we're shown exactly what's at stake in the Human Covenant War, and just how badly we've been losing up until this point. We're no longer fighting over an esoteric ring dotted with strange alien architecture. We're on our last stand, clawing to keep hold of our own home turf. And if we lose, The Fall of Reach is a novel by Eric Nyland. It acts as a prologue to the events of Halo Combat Evolved, and was published just a month before the game was released. Apparently it was written in 7 weeks flat, which is just ridiculous. It takes me months and months to write a 20-minute long script rambling about VR goggles. What was this dude on? I picked up The Fall of Reach after finishing the first 2 games, hungry for more Halo content. What really stuck in my mind as a kid turning these pages for the first time was the gut-wrenching descriptions of first contact with the Covenant. A peaceful world like Harvest, lush and brimming with grasslands and forests and 1,000 lakes swarming with schools of fish, turned into a crater, barren desert. Thin gray sunlight reflected off a glassy crust. Heat wavered from the surface. Isolated regions glowed red. 3 million lives lost in an instant. No warning or motivation given. This is a war so asymmetrical and lopsided, it's considered a win if a dozen human ships and thousands of lives are sacrificed to take down one alien craft, where each battle is against overwhelming odds. And failure means the literal glassing of your planet to the point where there isn't even a blade of grass left alive. Where the stakes are the extinction of the human race. Last month, I sat on my fire escape and watched the sunset fire climb over the hill towards my apartment. My friends and belongings and future suddenly at risk. As the flames crept closer, I felt that same sinking dread that I'd felt watching Reach fall, or the Marines getting overwhelmed by the flood, or New Mombasa disappearing in an instant. Halo stirred something in me as a kid, an existential angst that has followed me to this day. I think everyone experiences that distinct moment when the comforting blanket of childhood is ripped away, leaving only the cold reality of life. Halo has stayed with me for a lot of reasons through all these years. But beyond the simple fun of shooting aliens with my friends, playing through these games as I grew up helped me to understand the fleeting nature of life and the tenuous threads that hold our world together. The pit in my stomach growing more and more as I realized how fragile my existence truly is, until I was forced to ask, does existence and all of its requisite suffering, does it mean anything? What does it all mean is just about the greatest mystery we are burdened with as humans. Undeniable proof of our sentience and self-awareness. From the moment we could paint the walls of a cave and use grunts to communicate, we've been trying to find one simple solution that explains everything. For many people, religion is the answer to this problem of meaning. The belief that some greater power bestows your journey with divine significance. An essential purpose that only needs to be discovered and understood. Speaking of religion, Halo 2. Good lord, this game was ambitious. You don't just play as the stoic green man this time around. About half of the campaign is spent in the pointy shoes of the Arbiter, a disgraced Covenant commander who failed to protect the most important religious object in his entire culture. It turns out, religion, and the search for meaning, is central to the entire conflict Halo is set in. This strange assortment of different alien species has been unified by a promise, a covenant.
On the blood of our fathers, on the blood of our sons, we swore to uphold the covenant, even to our dying breath,
that they are the rightful inheritors of these sacred rings, that will allow them to transcend to a higher plane of existence. In the Covenant's essentialist hierarchy, every race, from the Ungoi to the Sangheli, has a set purpose. And that purpose is to serve the hierarchs, ironically. The high prophets, the religious and political leaders of this entire society. They pull the strings here. They utilize the desperate need for meaning that all intelligent life seems to possess in order to wage wars of annihilation and quash any dissent. But like in any essentialist belief structure, the cracks begin to appear once you look past the surface. Deep in the bowels of Installation 05, a monster lies in wait. A manifestation of pure existential dread. The Grave Mind, and the Flood by extension, represent a kind of polar opposite to the Covenant. It is a parasitic organism that spreads endlessly from one planet to the next, consuming sentient life forms and assimilating them into one mass of living death. The Flood are not guided by essentialism, by finding some preordained meaning hidden in the programming of the universe. There's no religious order here, no rites to perform or great journey to attain. There's only the raw, nihilistic hunger of a meaningless universe consuming itself. At least the Grave Mind doesn't bullshit you.
There is much talk, and I have listened through rock and metal and time. Now I shall talk, and you shall listen. This one's containment, and this one's great journey are the same. from a doomed existence. But you will find no salvation on this ring.
As this waking nightmare points out, Chief isn't particularly bothered by the revelation that Halo is not, in fact, a gateway to paradise.
This one is machine and nerve, and has its mind concluded. This one is but flesh and faith, and is the more deluded.
For the Arbiter, this is the moment where the stars truly fall from his eyes, where he's forced to finally understand that his religion, his culture, and his identity have been nothing but lies. Such a realization could crush him, the sudden void of meaning filled with nihilism. If nothing is assured, if there's no greater purpose to this struggle, what's the point in fighting? Why not simply let the tide wash over you? Arbiter would have probably appreciated having some Albert Camus to read through while the Gravemind yaps. Camus was not the first existentialist. In fact, he hated and rejected that label. Nonetheless, his philosophical work is lumped in with other existentialist thinkers who all addressed life's big questions with a relatively simple answer. Life is irrational and meaningless. The whole damn thing, from birth to grave. And the real solution to that is not to endlessly search for meaning, to arbitrarily force life into the confines of essentialism, but to truly accept that there is no essential meaning to be found. Meaning is not something fixed and immutable. Your life's purpose is not etched in stone somewhere, only waiting for you to find it. What makes Camus special amongst existentialist philosophers, though, is that he wasn't satisfied to just leave it at that. He couldn't sit and watch Sisyphus, cursed to push a boulder up a mountain over and over again, and accept that on its face. If he must struggle endlessly in a meaningless existence, Camus decided, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Sisyphus, the man who must endlessly repeat a task that's impossible, knowing full well his efforts are futile, that his struggle has no intrinsic purpose that he can delude himself into believing. He could choose to turn around and let the boulder roll over him, accept a nihilistic vision of life without a fight, give himself up to the infinite forces of entropy. But instead, he simply persists. He chooses to fight, to push that boulder up the hill, not because of any promised reward, but because he finds purpose and beauty in the act itself, in the strength of his body, the sureness of the boulder, and the fact that he's alive to experience the world at all. He doesn't depend on anything external to guide his hand. He finds freedom in embracing the absurd. He finds meaning in the struggle. I'm sure we all feel a bit like Sisyphus sometimes, pushing against the boulder of life, occasionally getting flattened by it. And the boulder certainly isn't getting any lighter, is it? In fact, it sometimes seems to be getting heavier, each step up the mountain feeling more and more difficult. How can we cope with this curse, the gnawing futility of life? There are easy answers, so many they can hardly be counted. But there is only one that actually works. Accept the meaninglessness. Embrace it. Find joy in the freedom that it brings, and find your own way to rage against the dying of the light. I've personally been able to do this through connecting with other people, but also through exercise and nature and food and making silly little YouTube videos about things that fascinate me. As I enter my 30s, I've found that the endless search for an essential explanation of life has led me nowhere. I know life is meaningless. I accept that. But I also, against all logic, I need it to mean something. I need purpose, like we all do, I think. And so I find it in the small, fleeting moments that fill my days. Even as the world burns, I focus on what I can control. I'll try my best to take joy in it, too. That's the conclusion that I've come to, anyway. And I think I know someone else who has done the same. Master Chief embraces the absurd. He is neither seduced by the Covenant's promise of meaning, nor consumed by the Flood's nihilism. He understands that each day could be his last, that the end is around every corner. Yet he persists, defying both dogma and despair. He fights not for any promise of salvation, but to protect his friends and comrades, to do his part. Indeed, one must imagine Master Chief happy.
If we don't make it,
We'll make it.
it's been an honor serving with you, John.
Thanks for watching. This was a really fun and deeply personal project to work on, and I hope it speaks to you in the same way that these games did, and still do, for me. I'd like to continue making thoughtful content like this, and if you'd like to support me and help get these out a little bit faster, please give me a like, a follow, and consider supporting me on Patreon. See you on the next one.